In 1990, the Boston Red Sox were on a run and were in need of bullpen help, so they did the logical thing, make a trade. However, the Red Sox did not know they would be making their worst move since initiating the curse of the Bambino. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. Starting us off in the letter B, Jeff Bagwell. Bagwell was born May 27, 1968 in Boston, Massachusetts. The Bagwell family were avid Red Sox fans and Jeff was no different. He grew up idolizing the great Sox legend Carl Yastrzemski. And baseball was in this guy's blood. Both his parents played baseball and softball respectively at high levels. His mother, Janice, recalled from Bagwell's youth saying, "Jeff could throw a ball before he could walk. When he was 6 months old, we'd throw a ball to him and he would throw it back." Bagwell played many sports in high school but shined enough in baseball to get a scholarship from the University of Hartford. He was then drafted in 1989 in storybook fashion to his favorite team, the Boston Red Sox. He proceeded to tear it up with both the single and double-A teams for the Red Sox. But in 1990, what would go down as one of the worst and most infamous trades in baseball, the Boston Red Sox sent 22-year-old Jeff Bagwell to the Houston Astros for 37-year-old Larry Anderson. This trade from the Red Sox was devastating for Bagwell, who was a lifelong Sox fan, but it launched his eventual Hall of Fame MLB career. Bagwell played in the MLB from 1991 to 2005 for the Astros his entire career. He batted and threw righty. He played first base his whole career. He batted .297 for his career average, scoring 1,517 runs with 2,314 hits, driving in 1,529 RBIs while launching 449 home runs. 79.9 WAR, .0371 WAR per game, 149 OPS plus, and a .419 advanced on-base average. Bagwell was most well known for his phenomenal offensive prowess, hitting over 30 home runs in 9 seasons and walking over 100 times in 7 straight seasons. But his run production was off the charts. In the 2000 season, he scored 152 runs while driving in 132 runs. In fact, he scored 100 or more runs 9 times and drove in over 100 runs 7 times in his career. Throughout his career, Bagwell used great power, contact, and plate discipline to win an MVP, Rookie of the Year, and 3 Silver Sluggers en route to a spot in the MLB Hall of Fame. Bagwell was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2017, winning 86.2% of the vote on his 7th ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Hitting a ball 400 feet as a 12-year-old was enough to get Harold Baines scouted by former White Sox owner Bill Veeck while still in Little League. Now, while that distance may be alleged, what isn't alleged is Baines' hitting ability, which landed him in the MLB Hall of Fame. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And coming up 12th on the list, Harold Baines. Baines was born March 15th, 1959 in Easton, Maryland. He grew up playing multiple sports, including leading his high school to a state finals in soccer. But basketball was what Baines considered his best sport, saying, quote, "I played forward, center, and guard. I could dunk the ball and I averaged 22 points a game." But after receiving no offers for basketball, Baines shifted his focus onto baseball. And he was so good in high school that when scouts attempted to watch him play, their plans were thwarted by his opponents intentionally walking him nearly every at-bat. And it was around this time that Bill Veeck had bought back the White Sox and had been following Baines ever since he watched him play that Little League game. And without hesitation, Veeck signed Baines in person just minutes after his draft pick to the Chicago White Sox became official. Harold Baines played in the MLB from 1980 to 2001 for the White Sox, Rangers, Athletics, Orioles, and Indians. He batted and threw lefty. He played right field and DH. He bat .289 for his career average, scoring 1,299 runs with 2,866 hits, driving in 1,628 RBIs while swatting 384 home runs. 38.7 WAR, .0136 WAR per game, 121 OPS plus, and a .365 advanced on base average. While Baines may not have accumulated the most WAR, he was regarded as being incredibly consistent. In fact, he hit over 20 home runs 11 times and bat over .280 16 times in his career. Baines actually fell off the Hall of Fame ballot in 2011 because he only received 4.8% of the vote, just shy of the 5% needed to stay on the ballot. However, Baines was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2019 via the Today's Game Era Committee, which sparked some controversy due to his low WAR total and a good amount of the 16-person panel playing, managing, or being an exec during the time that Baines was a player. But nevertheless, he got in. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. You would think having a legendary nickname like Home Run would land you more than just 96 career home runs, but when Walter Johnson says you were the most dangerous hitter he ever faced, I think you've earned the distinction. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the dead ball era's most dangerous hitter, Frank Home Run Baker. Baker was born March 13th, 1886 in Trapp, Maryland. Now everyone around the Bakers growing up thought that Frank's brother Norman would be the one to make it to the big leagues with his extraordinary fastball, but Norman only ever made it to local and Baltimore independent teams. Frank, however, would start his semi-pro career at the age of 19 in 1905, initially as a pitcher. That didn't really work out, so he went to the outfield. That didn't stick either, but he found a home at third base where he played for the rest of his career. And legendary manager Connie Mack ended up finding Baker and purchasing him for $500 in 1908, kicking off his MLB career. Frank Baker played in the MLB from 1908 to 1922 for the Philadelphia Athletics and the Yankees. He batted lefty and threw righty. He played third base his whole career. He bat .307 for his career average, scoring 887 runs with 1,838 hits, driving in 991 RBIs while leading the league in home runs 4 times. 62.8 WAR, .0398 WAR per game, 135 OPS plus, and a 389 advanced on-base average. Baker, of course, was most well known for his power. In fact, he got his nickname in the 1911 World Series after hitting 2 crucial home runs, one in Game 2 and one in Game 3 off of Christy Mathewson. The Athletics would end up winning that series due to Baker's late-game heroics, as well as 2 more titles during his tenure in Philly. But power wasn't Baker's only talent. He was a dead ball era 5-tool player. He had the aforementioned league-leading power, 235 steals, consistently batting over 300, 9.6 career defensive WAR, and he played third base, so we can assume he had a good arm. Baker was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1955 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away June 28, 1963 at the age of 77 in his hometown in Trapp, Maryland. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. When the Pittsburgh press declares you the second Honus Wagner, that can mount a lot of pressure on you. But a Hall of Fame career and more defensive WAR than Wagner left Dave Bancroft writing his own legacy. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. Today we look at the defensive wizard, Dave Bancroft. Bancroft was born April 20th, 1891 in Sioux City, Iowa, and that is where he spent his youth until he signed to play in the Minnesota-Wisconsin League in 1909. He was then drafted by the Portland Beavers of the Class AA Pacific Coast League, where he played alongside fellow Hall of Famer Harry Heilman. In 1915, the Indians and Giants had the first 2 picks of the Portland players. Both teams feared Bancroft would demand too much money, so they went their separate ways. That left the Phillies to steal him for a mere $5,000, and later that year, he made his MLB debut. Dave Bancroft played in the MLB from 1915 to 1930 for the Phillies, Giants, Braves, and the Brooklyn Robins, which would later become the Dodgers. He was a switch hitter who threw righty. He played shortstop his whole career. He bat .279 for his career average, scoring 1,048 runs with 2,004 hits, driving in 591 RBIs while walking nearly twice as much as he struck out. 49.9 WAR, .0261 WAR per game, 98 OPS plus, and a 340 advanced on-base average. Now, Beauty, a nickname he received due to his habit of shouting Beauty every time his pitcher threw a good pitch, wasn't an offensive machine, but more a defensive technician. He has a whopping 23.5 defensive WAR. That's good for 26th all-time. Bancroft and teammate/future Hall of Famer Frankie Frisch held down the middle infield for the Giants, where they won back-to-back World Series titles in 1921 and 1922. And during his playing days in Boston, Bancroft was a player-manager for them from 1924 to 1927. Bancroft was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1971 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away October 9th, 1972 at the age of 81 in Superior, Wisconsin. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. When Ernie Banks was 8 years old, he got his first baseball glove in baseball, and he was not impressed. His dad had to actually pay him nickels and dimes just so that he would go play catch with him. But that wouldn't be the only time that the future Hall of Famer got paid to play baseball. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. Today we look at Mr. Cub himself, Ernie Banks. Banks was born January 31st, 1931 in Dallas, Texas. Now, Banks' high school didn't actually have baseball, so he played softball in the summers for his church. And it was there that he was discovered by Bill Blair, who was a scout for the Kansas City Monarchs. Banks was then promised a spot on the Monarchs after impressing the likes of Cool Papa Bell, but shortly thereafter he was drafted into the U.S. Army and served during the Korean War in Germany. And upon returning in 1953, Banks was purchased by the Chicago Cubs for $20,000, and it would be a very fruitful 17 years in Chicago for Mr. Cub. Ernie Banks played in the MLB from 1953 to 1970 for the Chicago Cubs his whole career. He bat and threw righty, he played shortstop and first base, he bat .274 for his career average, scoring 1,305 runs with 2,583 hits, driving in 1,636 RBIs while hitting 512 home runs. 67.7 WAR, .0267 WAR per game, 122 OPS plus, and a 370 advance on base average while winning 2 MVPs. Now, Banks was most well known for his incredible power, being one of the 28 members in the 500 home run club. He also hit the second most home runs by a player who predominantly played shortstop and the third most home runs in games where he played shortstop. He was a 14-time All-Star, hit over 40 home runs in 4 straight seasons, and had his number 14 retired by the Chicago Cubs. Ernie Banks was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1977, winning 83.8% of the vote on his first ballot. He passed away January 23, 2015 at the age of 83 in Chicago, Illinois. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Jake Beckley's election into the MLB Hall of Fame in 1971 had a lot of people saying, who? But as you will soon find out, he was a player worth remembering. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the man they call Eagle Eye, Jake Beckley. Beckley was born August 4th, 1867 in Hannibal, Missouri. He spent his teenage years playing for semi-pro teams in the Hannibal area, and a former teammate of Beckley's in Hannibal, Bob Hart, helped Beckley go down to Kansas and play for a professional team in Leavenworth, and it was in Leavenworth that Beckley really started to take off, batting .342 and .400 in consecutive seasons. Beckley was then sold to the St. Louis Whites, where he would play only 34 games before he would be sold to the Pittsburgh Alleghenies of the National League. Jake Beckley played in the MLB from 1888 to 1907 for the Pittsburgh Alleghenies, Burghers, and Pirates, as well as the New York Giants, Reds, and Cardinals. He bat and threw lefty. He played first base his whole career. He bat .308 for his career average, scoring 1,603 runs with 2,938 hits, driving in 1,581 RBIs while hitting the 4th most triples of all time at 244. 61.2 WAR, .0256 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a 377 advanced on base average. Now, Beckley was widely regarded for his hitting ability, which is actually how he got the nickname Eagle Eye. Not for his ability to draw walks, but for his ability to put the bat on the ball. He was also just an incredibly consistent player, hitting over 313 of his 20 seasons and getting over 3 WAR in 12 of his 20 seasons. Now, after Beckley retired, he operated a grain business in Kansas City, where he placed an order with a Cincinnati company, which cabled back, "We can't find you in Dunn and Bradstreet." Beckley replied, "Look in Spalding Baseball Guide for any of the last 20 years. Jake Beckley had jokes, apparently. Beckley was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1971 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away June 25th, 1918 at the age of 50 in Kansas City, Missouri. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Satchel Paige had always claimed that Cool Papa Bell was so fast that he could flip off the light switch and get in bed before the lights went out. Well, it turns out that that story is actually true. Welcome back to Learn Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we discuss one of the greatest players from the Negro Leagues, Cool Papa Bell. Bell was born May 17th, 1903 in Starkville, Mississippi, and he grew up helping out his grandfather at his farm in Mississippi. Now, he started playing baseball at around the age of 10, but his opportunity for professional baseball came in the spring of 1922. The East St. Louis Cubs were in need of a pitcher, and Bell jumped at the chance to show off his skills. Now, the Cubs would end up losing that game 9-1, but Bell impressed the Cubs so much that they signed him for $90 a month. Cool Papa Bell played in the Negro Leagues from 1922 to 1946, with a break from 1938 to 1941. He played for the St. Louis Stars, the Chicago American Giants, the Detroit Wolves, the Homestead Grays, and the Pittsburgh Crawfords. He switch hit and threw lefty. He played center field and pitched. He bat .325 for his career average, scoring 1,152 runs with 1,548 hits, driving in 596 RBIs while stealing 285 bags. 34.7 WAR, .0289 WAR per game, 126 OPS plus, and a 394 advanced on base average, and 2 Negro League World Series titles. Now, Cool Papa Bell obviously was most well known for his speed, and as that famous faster than light story goes, it is actually true. When Satchel Paige and Bell were rooming together, Bell noticed that the light switch had about a 3-second or so delay from when he would flick it to when the lights went out. So with this foresight, he bet Paige that he could flip off the light switch and get in bed before the lights went out, And he did it, leaving Satchel Paige completely flabbergasted. But his speed on the diamond was so prolific that he learned to switch hit just so he could hit lefty more to get down the first baseline faster. It was also said that if he hit a ground ball to the left side of the infield and it bounced more than just one time, you could not throw him out, hence why he famously chopped down the ball with his bat. Rube Foster even put him in a race against Jimmy Lyon, who was the fastest player in the league at that point, and Bell smoked him with ease. Bell was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1974 via the Negro Leagues Committee. He passed away March 7th, 1991 at the age of 87 in St. Louis, Missouri. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Adrian Beltre is widely regarded as one of the biggest jokesters in all of baseball. But what is not a joke is Beltre's incredible baseball talent. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the newest Hall of Famers on the list, Adrian Beltre. Beltre was born April 7th, 1979 in Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. And of course, being born in the DR, Beltre grew up playing baseball a ton. He said they would get creative and use whatever they could find as a baseball, whether it be a balled up sock or a tennis ball. And after Beltre turned 11, his father introduced him to a man named Franklin Rodriguez, who ran a baseball school in Santo Domingo. And despite being only 11 years old, Rodriguez noticed Beltre's rocket arm and hard-hitting ability. And in 1991, Beltre watched an Astros game and decided he wanted to be like their slick-fielding third baseman Ken Caminiti. So he slid into the hot corner and never left. And a few years later in 1994, Los Angeles Dodger scout Pablo Peguero was donating baseball supplies to Rodriguez's camp, as he had done for years, when he noticed Beltre's outstanding arm and great hitting ability. And despite being 1 year younger than the allowed age to sign a player, which is 16, the Dodgers signed him anyway with documents that said his birth year was 1 year prior to when it actually was. And on July 7th, 1994, Beltre signed the first of many contracts to play Major League Baseball. Adrian Beltre played in the MLB from 1998 to 2018 for the Dodgers, Mariners, Red Sox, and Rangers. He bat and threw righty. He played third base his whole career. He bat .286 for his career average, scoring 1,524 runs with 3,166 hits, driving in 1,707 RBIs while hitting 477 home runs. 93.7 WAR, .0319 WAR per game, 116 OPS plus, and a 362 advanced on-base average, as well as 27.3 defensive WAR. Beltre was most well known for his power, defense, and ability to accumulate hits. And he was practically a 5-tool player, just missing that speed, but clearly he did not need to steal a lot of bags to become one of the greatest third basemen in baseball history. Here is where he stands against the all-time third baseman rankings. He is third all-time in WAR, second in defensive WAR, second in hits, third in home runs, first in RBIs, and second in games played at third base. Beltre was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2024, winning 95.1% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Holding 3 baseballs in one hand, that's pretty good. Holding 4 baseballs in one hand, now you're getting somewhere. With 7 baseballs in one hand, now that's just ridiculous. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we're going over the greatest catcher of all time, as well as the second best Cincinnati Red ever, Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench was born December 7th, 1947 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but the Bench family settled in Binger, Oklahoma. Now, Johnny started playing ball at the age of 6 when his dad told him catching was the quickest way to the big leagues because that's what they wanted. Now, Bench was inspired so much by fellow Oklahoma baseball legend Mickey Mantle that he told his 2nd grade teacher that one day he would be a professional baseball player. And a few years after that, he would actually start practicing his own signature for when he got famous. Now, Bench would become an all-state athlete in both basketball and baseball, as well as being valedictorian of his class. Now, all that led to the first ever free agent amateur draft in the MLB in 1965, where the Cincinnati Reds took Johnny Bench with a 36th overall pick in the 2nd round. And in 1967, at the age of just 19, a year after winning Minor League Player of the Year, the Reds would call up Bench to start his MLB career. Johnny Bench played in the MLB from 1967 to 1983 for the Reds his whole career. He bat and threw righty. He played catcher his whole career with some first and third base at the end of his career. He bat .267 for his career average, scoring 1,091 runs with 2,048 hits, driving in 1,376 RBIs while hitting 389 home runs. 75.2 WAR, .0348 WAR per game, 126 OPS plus, and a 377 advanced on base average, as well as 19.7 defensive WAR. Now, Johnny Bench is widely regarded as the best best catcher of all time, and for good reason. Bench is first all-time among catchers in WAR and JAWS. He is second all-time in offensive WAR and home runs, as well as ranking 6th all-time in defensive WAR. He is also the second best Cincinnati Red of all time according to career WAR, just behind Pete Rose. And after retiring in 1983, the Reds retired his uniform number 5 as well as inducting him into the Team Hall of Fame. He was also named to the MLB All-Century team as the best catcher in the past century. Johnny Bench was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1989, winning 96.4% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Legendary Hall of Fame manager Connie Mack once said that if he had to win one big game and he had every pitcher he had ever managed in their prime, that Chief Bender would be the man he chose to toe the rubber. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the greatest Native Americans to ever play the game of baseball, Charles Chief Bender. Bender was born May 5th, 1884 in Crow Wing County, Minnesota. With his father being German American and his mother being Native American, Bender was born into the Mississippi band of the Ojibwe tribe. And while Bender was working on a farm, a teacher from the Carlisle Indian School, a school that would later be made famous by Jim Thorpe, came and recruited Bender and his brother to come join the school. After graduating from Carlisle Indian School, Bender would join a semi-pro team in Harrisburg, where he would actually pitch in an exhibition against the Chicago Cubs and hold his own in that matchup. But it was on that Harrisburg team when one of Connie Mack's scouts discovered Bender, and it was just 1 year later in 1903 when Bender would join the Philadelphia Athletics and kick off his MLB career. Chief Bender played in the MLB from 1903 to 1917, coming back to the MLB for one game in 1925. He played for the Philadelphia Athletics, the Baltimore Terrapins, Philadelphia Phillies, and the Chicago White Sox. He bat and threw righty. He had a 2.46 ERA with a 1.113 WHIP, a career record of 212 and 127 and 1,711 strikeouts, 42.6 WAR, .127 WAR per 9 innings, 112 ERA plus, and a 2.29 FIP. Now, Bender was most well known for his intelligence and poise on the mound. Whether it was studying Christy Mathewson to help develop his control or pitching a 4-hit shutout in the World Series, Bender was a crafty mastermind on the mound. Bender largely threw 3 pitches: a fastball, a curveball, and something he called the fadeaway, a pitch that would run away from left-handed hitters, something akin to the Devin Williams airbender changeup nowadays. And he would always be changing arm angles and speed to try and outsmart the hitter. Chief Bender was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1953 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away May 22nd, 1954 at the age of 70 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. A lot of people know Yogi Berra as one of baseball's biggest winners, but not a lot of people know he was involved in one of America's greatest wins on June 6, 1944, also known as D-Day. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the winningest player in baseball history, Yogi Berra. Berra was born May 12, 1925 in St. Louis, Missouri. With his parents being Italian immigrants, his full name at birth was Lorenzo Pietro Berra, which in English translates to Lawrence Peter Berra, his name in the United States. However, he got the nickname Yogi when he and his brothers went to go see an Indian film, and a character named Yogi waddled like Lawrence in that film, so the nickname stuck with everyone. When Berra was 15 years old, his local baseball manager arranged a tryout for the St. Louis Cardinals. And despite that tryout not going great, Berra was offered a contract by the Cardinals but turned it down due to there being no signing bonus. And Berra would receive one more offer from the Cardinals as well as the St. Louis Browns, but turned both down due to the bonus not being high enough. But Berra's local manager talked to the head of the Yankees farm system and told him Berra's signing demands. And in October of 1942, Yogi Berra signed with the New York Yankees. Yogi Berra played in the MLB from 1946 to 1965, taking a 1-year hiatus in 1964. He played for the Yankees most of his career and 4 games with the Mets. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played catcher his whole career with some outfield at the end of his career. He bat .285 for his career average, scoring 1,175 runs with 2,150 hits, driving in 1,430 RBIs while hitting 358 home runs. 59.5 WAR, .0281 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a 379 advanced on-base average while winning 10 World Series championships and 3 MVPs. Now, Berra was most well known for his great power and incredible winning track record. He, of course, has the most World Series wins of all time at 10 wins as a player. Now, it didn't hurt that he played with players like Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Phil Rizzuto, Whitey Ford, but Berra was consistently atop the team's leaderboard in WAR throughout his entire career. Now, Berra was a great ball player, but he served in the U.S. military during World War II, where he spent 10 days aboard a rocket rocket boat just off the coast of Normandy. And while he was in the military, he and his sailor buddies played a game against Mel Ott's Giants, and he impressed Mel Ott so much that Ott called the Yankees and offered $50,000 for the contract to Yogi Berra, a guy who the Yankees only signed for $500. Yogi Berra was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1972, winning 85.6% of the vote on his second ballot. He passed away September 22nd, 2015 in West Caldwell, New Jersey. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. Craig Biggio accomplished a lot in his MLB career, being a member of the 3,000 hit club and being inducted into the MLB Hall of Fame. But in 1984, before he ever set foot on a major league field, he came within just mere inches of death. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the 27th member of the 3,000 hit club, Craig Biggio. Biggio was born December 14th, 1965 in Smithtown, New York. And growing up in Long Island in the 70s, Biggio did all the classic things like having a paper route and playing ball. And like Johnny Bench, Biggio's father taught him to play catcher because it was the fastest way to the major leagues. And Biggio grew up liking catcher, no doubt partially because it was his father's old position, but he said, quote, "I loved to control the game." And of course, being an aspiring catcher in New York in the 70s meant that Biggio spent a lot of time looking up to Yankees catcher Thurman Munson. And after high school, Biggio turned down an offer to play football at Boston University in favor for a partial scholarship to play baseball at Seton Hall. And it was at Seton Hall when Biggio, Martise Robinson, and Mo Vaughn would form the legendary college trio of the Hitmen. And on June 2nd, 1987, the Houston Astros would select Craig Biggio with the 22nd overall pick in the MLB draft, kickstarting his Hall of Fame career. Craig Biggio played in the MLB from 1988 to 2007 for the Astros his whole career. He bat and threw righty, he played catcher and second base, he bat .281 for his career average, scoring 1,844 runs with 3,060 hits, driving in 1,175 RBIs while stealing 414 bases, 65.5 WAR, .023 WAR per game, 112 OPS plus, and a .369 advanced on base average. Biggio was most well known for his ability to hit the ball and for his loyalty, which led him to being the second greatest Astro of all time behind Jeff Bagwell. But all those hits almost never happened. In 1984, during a summer league game, lightning struck the field, knocking Biggio unconscious and tragically killing one of his teammates. But that event led to Biggio playing each game like it was his last, and 3,000 hits and a trip to Cooperstown later, I think it's safe to say that he did just that. Craig Biggio was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2015, winning 82.7% of the vote on his third ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. There has been perhaps no one that the rise of advanced sabermetrics in baseball has helped more than Bert Blyleven. They've revealed that he was not only a deserving Hall of Famer, but one of the best pitchers of all time. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we go over the Flying Dutchman, Bert Blyleven. Blyleven was born April 6, 1951 in Zeist, Netherlands, with his full Dutch name being Rick Albert Blyleven. His parents got married in Nazi-occupied Netherlands and fled to Saskatchewan, Canada, and eventually settled in Garden Grove, Southern California. Blyleven quickly converted from catcher to pitcher when his coach noticed his strong arm, and upon that conversion, his dad built a pitcher's mound in their backyard so that Blyleven could practice. Now, his father liked to listen to Dodgers games on the radio and heard Vin Scully talk about Sandy Koufax's chronic arm pain, so he forbid Bert from throwing the curveball until he was 14 years old. Blyleven had already attracted major league scouts in high school with 2 no-hitters and a 21 strikeout performance, and at just 18 years old, the Twins would select Blyleven with the 55th overall pick in the third round of the MLB amateur draft. And on June 5th, 1970, Blyleven would make his MLB debut against the Washington Senators. Bert Blyleven played in the MLB from 1970 to 1992 for the Twins, Rangers, Pirates, Indians, and Angels. He bat and threw righty. He had a 3.31 ERA, a 1.198 WHIP, a career record of 287 and 250, and 3,701 strikeouts, 94.5 WAR, .171 WAR per 9 innings, 118 ERA plus, and a 3.19 FIP. Now, Blyleven was most well known for his longevity and his devastating curveball, but he almost didn't even make the Hall of Fame. Many voters were concerned with Blyleven's high loss total, as well as being overshadowed by pitchers like Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan, and Jim Palmer during his best years. And all of that led to him only receiving 17.5% of the vote on his first ballot. But thankfully, more advanced stats like WAR came around, and Blyleven was treated as he should be, as one of the statistical best pitchers of all time. Bert Blyleven was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2011, winning 79.7% of the vote on his 14th ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. An MLB scout once wrote about Wade Boggs saying, "Needs a lot of help with bat." Now, if you think a future member of the 3,000 hit club needs a lot of help with his bat, Honestly, I don't know what to show you that'll impress you. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the best Red Sox of all time, Wade Boggs. Boggs was born June 15th, 1958 in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, he grew up in a military family which gave him the habit of doing routines and the same thing every day, a mindset that he would take into baseball. Now, Boggs tore it up in high school. He even read the Ted Williams book, The Science of Hitting, to improve his patience at the plate. A few scouts saw some struggles with Boggs, but the Red Sox scout was able to convince his team to take Boggs in the 7th round of the 1976 amateur draft, kickstarting his eventual Hall of Fame career. Wade Boggs played in the MLB from 1982 to 1999 for the Red Sox, Yankees, and Devil Rays. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played third base. He bat .328 for his career average, scoring 1,513 runs with 3,010 hits, driving in 1,014 RBIs while winning 5 batting titles. 91.4 WAR, .0375 WAR per game, 131 OPS plus, and a .392 advanced on-base average. Boggs was most well known for his great patience and bat-to-ball skills. He walked more than he struck out for every single season except one in his career. He also bat a whopping 60 points higher than the league average during his career. Along with his 5 batting titles, Boggs won 2 Gold Gloves and 8 Silver Sluggers. He was also elected to 12 All-Star games as well as winning the 1996 World Series. But as I mentioned about his personal life, Boggs was a creature of habit. He has many stories of his numerous superstitions, including but not limited to wearing the same socks every game, fielding exactly 150 ground balls at practice, and drawing the Jewish word for good luck in the dirt while he was batting. But his most well-known superstition was him eating chicken before every single game, hence why he had the nickname of the Chicken Man. Wade Boggs was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2005, winning 91.9% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. As a child, Jim Bottomley yearned for the mines, as one does being born into a coal mining family. But a very, very different career path ended up finding him and giving him a much more successful life. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. Today, we look at old Sonny Jim himself, Jim Bottomley. Bottomley was born April 23rd, 1900 in Oglesby, Illinois. And as mentioned in the intro, he was born into a coal mining and farming family. And being the dangerous profession that it is, Bottomley would end up losing his younger brother in an unfortunate coal mining accident. But a better life would find Bottomley when a police officer who had connections to the St. Louis Cardinals saw him play the game of baseball. So that policeman encouraged Cardinals general manager Branch Rickey to send a scout to further inquire of this Jim Bottomley fellow. That would end up being a great decision because just one tryout camp later, Bottomley would end up signing immediately with the Cardinals for $150 a month, kicking off his MLB career. Jim Bottomley played in the MLB from 1922 to 1937 for the Cardinals, Reds, and St. Louis Browns, the team that would later become the Orioles. He bat and threw lefty. He played first base. He bat .310 for his career average, scoring 1,177 runs with 2,313 hits, driving in 1,422 RBIs while winning the 1928 MVP. 36 WAR, .018 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a .390 advanced on base average. Now, Jim Bottomley was most well known for his high batting average. He consistently ranked high in the National League in batting average throughout the entire prime of his career. Now, Bottomley's low WAR total suggests that he maybe shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. However, his Hall of Fame metrics still stack out to that of an average Hall of Famer. All the negativity in the world could not bring Jim Bottomley down, as he was renowned for his incredible positivity, hence why he has the nickname of Sonny Jim. And as he would put it himself, quote, "I don't have a regret in the world. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I loved every minute of it." Jim Bottomley was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1974 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away December 11th, 1959 at the age of 59 in St. Louis, Missouri. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. In 2025, the current strikeout leader for batters is James Wood with 198 strikeouts and 629 plate appearances. And in 1948, Lou Boudreau had only 9 strikeouts and 676 plate appearances. So it would take 1948 Lou Boudreau a mammoth 15,231 plate appearances, which equates to about 24 full seasons, to reach the same amount of strikeouts that 2025 James Wood has in only 627 plate appearances. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And for the 25th episode of Learn a Hall of Famer, we take a look at the slick fielding but stiff-legged shortstop, Lou Boudreau. Boudreau was born July 17, 1917 in Harvey, Illinois. Growing up, Lou's father instilled in him a spirit of leadership and a drive to win. He would even take Lou to the park and hit him 100 ground balls and count the errors that he made to track his progress. However, Lou's high school didn't have a baseball team, so he shifted his focus onto basketball, a sport in which he excelled in. He then went to the University of Illinois, where he was the captain of both the basketball and the baseball team. Unfortunately, all that basketball took a toll on Boudreau's ankles. He ended up needing to tape them before every game of his MLB career. But those ankles did not stop Boudreau from receiving attention from the Cubs and Indians, as well as an offer to play in the National Basketball League, which was a precursor to the NBA. But Boudreau would end up choosing baseball and going to sign with Cleveland, kicking off his MLB career. Lou Boudreau played in the MLB from 1938 to 1952 for the Indians and Red Sox. He bat and threw righty, he played shortstop, he bat .295 for his career average, scoring 861 runs with 1,779 hits, driving in 789 RBIs while winning the 1948 MVP. 63.1 more, .0383 WAR per game, 120 OPS plus, and a 374 advanced on base average with 23.3 defensive WAR. Now, Boudreau was most well known for his leadership. He was a player manager for 10 years, and he even won a World Series for the Indians during that stretch. Boudreau, however, was an excellent fielder with a great eye at the plate. He ranks 27th all-time in defensive WAR with 23.3, as well as 3 seasons with a sub 2% strikeout rate, and no season in his entire career with a double-digit strikeout percentage. When baseball commissioner Bowie Kuhn introduced Boudreau, he said, quote, "There are hitters in the Hall of Fame with higher batting averages, but I do not believe there is in the Hall of Fame a baseball man who brought more use of intellect and advocation of mind to the game than Lou Boudreau." Lou Boudreau was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1970, winning 77.3% of the vote on his 10th ballot. Boudreau passed away August 10th, 2001 at the age of 84 in Frankfort, Illinois. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Here is a comprehensive list of all the MLB Hall of Famers to pitch a shutout in their debut. 22-year-old Juan Marichal, starting pitcher for the Giants, and 18-year-old Roger Bresnahan, catcher for the Washington Senators. Yes, you heard that right. A catcher. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the deadball era's most famous catcher, Roger Bresnahan. Bresnahan was born June 11, 1879 in Toledo, Ohio. His nickname, the Duke of Tralee, was given to him due to frequent errors about his birthplace, which most people thought was Tralee, Ireland, but in reality it was his parents who migrated from Ireland before Bresnahan was born. He started getting into baseball at his Catholic school in Toledo and eventually played for a semi-pro team in Michigan. And after graduating from high school, he became a professional baseball player at the age of 17 years old, playing for the Ohio State League. He was primarily a catcher, but he pitched a little as well. And in the following year, he would debut in the National League as a pitcher for the Washington Senators. However, he was let go after the 1897 season because he was holding out for a higher salary and the Senators were unwilling to pay it. In 1900, he returned to the National League with the Cubs, but he only ended up having 2 at-bats that year. But in 1901, he joined the newly fledged American League and would not leave the MLB for the next 15 years. Roger Bresnahan played in the MLB in 1897 and then from 1900 to 1915 for the Senators, Cubs, Orioles, Giants, and Cardinals. He bat and threw righty. He primarily played catcher. He bat .279 for his career average, scoring 682 runs with 1,252 hits, driving in 530 RBIs and stealing 212 bases. 42.9 more, .0297 WAR per game, 126 OPS plus, and a 374 advanced on base average. Bresnahan was most well known for his prowess at the catcher position. He made numerous innovations in protective equipment for catchers as well as batters. For the batters, he made a makeshift helmet made of a leather football helmet. Bresnahan is also responsible for catchers wearing shin guards, an innovation that is still used today. He also added leather to the catcher's mask to help absorb the shock from foul tips, another innovation that is still in use today. Bresnahan was also the first catcher to consistently bat high in the batting order. Now, usually catchers bat in the 8th spot, but Bresnahan's unique offensive skill set, which included great speed, allowed him to consistently be at the top of the batting order. Roger Bresnahan was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1945 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away December 4th, 1944 at the age of 65 in Toledo, Ohio. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. After the 1973 season, the most famous thing a person from the Brett family ever did was surrender Hank Aaron's 700th home run. But luckily for the Brett family name, George Brett would play his first of 20 full seasons the very next year in 1974, eventually culminating in a Hall of Fame career. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the greatest Kansas City Royal by a country mile, George Brett. Brett was born May 15, 1953 in Glendale, West Virginia. His first love was actually football, as he was the starting quarterback for his high school team. Now, he did still play baseball in high school, but he was overshadowed by his older brother, who was already pitching in the big leagues at this point, and by his teammate Scott McGregor, who would go on to have a 13-year MLB career. The ambidextrous Mr. Drama was a third baseman and shortstop in high school, with his team going 33-2 Brett's senior year. And 6 players, including Brett, were drafted off that team. He received no college offers, and most scouts were hesitant taking Brett because he still had some baby fat in his midsection. But Royal scouts Tom Farrick and Rosie Gilhousen pushed their team hard enough to end up taking Brett in the second round of the 1971 MLB Amateur Draft. George Brett played in the MLB from 1973 to 1993 for the Kansas City Royals. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played third base. He bat .305 for his career average, scoring 1,583 runs with 3,154 hits, driving in 1,596 RBIs and crushing 317 home runs. 88.6 WAR, .0327 WAR per game, 135 OPS plus, and a 384 advanced on-base average. Brett was most well known for his incredible all-around offensive prowess and legendary Kansas City Royals career. He is by far and away the best Royal of all time, nearly doubling the WAR of the second best player. He is also the only Royal to ever win an MVP. I mean, I can't even list off all the franchise records that Brett has in this video while keeping it a short. But some of the more impressive ones are single season batting average, where he has a 50-point lead to second place, as well as having 5 of the top 10 WAR seasons in franchise history. From ages 21 to 37, Brett finished every season between a 282 and a 390 batting average. He also finished his career with over 300 home runs, 200 stolen bases, 3,000 hits, 1,100 extra base hits, and more walks than strikeouts. And of course, he is famous for the Pine Tar game, where in the top of the 9th inning, Brett hit a 2-run home run off Goose Gossage and the Yankees to take a 5-4 lead. After circling the bases, the umpires inspected his bat and found that it violated Rule 1.10c. So, they called Brett out, and he went absolutely berserk. George Brett was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1999, winning 98.2% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. In the 4th grade, Lou Brock would be punished for throwing a spitball. His punishment? Researched the careers of some baseball greats in the library. And in his research, he saw the salaries of these players, and the number was so big that he had to ask his teacher what the number was. And it was in that moment that the poor, anxious kid from the Deep South knew what his career path would be. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today, we look at the ultra-speedy Cardinals legend, Lou Brock. Brock was born June 18th, 1939 in El Dorado, Arkansas. Now, the place he lived was very poor. It had only 300 people in it, the school had only 1 teacher, and no running water. And Brock would lie awake at night wondering how he could avoid a similar fate to his fellow townspeople. But Brock did not let the cards that he was dealt in life determine his fate. He made his high school baseball team largely in part because he could throw the ball farther than anybody else. And in college, Brock was so determined to make the baseball team that one day while shagging fly balls, he sprinted after every single one of them until he passed out. And when he came to, the coach let Brock hit 5 balls. He deposited every single one over the right field fence. And during college, Brock attracted major league attention from the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox. Brock would end up signing with the Cubs for $30,000 in 1960, being called up in September of 1961 to start his MLB career. Lou Brock played in the MLB from 1961 to 1979 for the Cubs and Cardinals. He bat and threw lefty. He played left field. He bat .293 for his career average, scoring 1,610 runs with 3,023 hits, driving in 900 RBIs while stealing 938 bags. 45.3 WAR, .0173 WAR per game, 109 OPS plus, and a 360 advanced on base average. Now, Lou Brock was most well known for his lightning fast, game-changing speed. He ranks second all-time in stolen bases behind some guy named Ricky Henderson. He seemed pretty good. Lou Brock also had a reported home to first base speed of 3.4 seconds and a drag bunt to first base speed of 3.1 seconds. For context, the 2025 leader of home to first base speed is Chandler Simpson with 3.97 seconds. But Lou Brock had some sneaky pop with the 2020 season in 1967, as well as hitting a mammoth 480-foot home run in spring training of 1962. Now, his defense wasn't great and he doesn't have the most WAR of all time, but he more than makes up for it with his ridiculous speed and over 3,000 career hits. Lou Brock was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1985, winning 79.7% of the vote on his first ballot. He passed away September 6, 2020 at the age of 81 in St. Charles, Missouri. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. The 19th century dead ball era is one of baseball's most fascinating time periods. It's when Major League Baseball became a thing in 1876 when the National League was founded. But one man stood far above the rest, the GOAT of the 19th century, Dan Brouthers. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the best offensive player of the 19th century, Dan Brouthers. Brouthers was born May 8, 1858 in Sylvan Lake, New York. Brouthers, like the last guy, Roger Bresnahan, is the son of Irish immigrants but was born in the US. His last name at birth was Bruder with 2 O's. Then in the 1870 census it changed to Bruder with a U. And by 1880 it changed to what it is currently, Brouthers. He and his father worked in factories as the part of New York that they lived in was very industrial and attracted many Irish immigrants. He started playing ball as a kid and eventually played for a semi-pro team in Wappingers Falls, New York, where he was involved in an on-field collision that unfortunately proved fatal for the other person. But in 1879, Brouthers joined the Troy Trojans of the National League, kicking off his legendary career. Dan Brouthers played in the MLB from 1879 to 1896, coming back for 2 games in 1904. He played for the Troy Trojans, Buffalo Bison, Detroit Wolverines, Boston, which is a part of the Braves franchise, the Boston Reds, Brooklyn, which is a part of the Dodgers franchise, Baltimore Orioles, Louisville Colonels, the Phillies, and the Giants. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played first base. He bat .342 for his career average, scoring 1,529 runs with 2,303 hits, driving in 1,301 RBIs with a .943 OPS, 79.8 WAR, .0476 WAR per game, 171 OPS plus, and a .437 advanced on base average. Dan Brouthers was most well known for his utter dominance in the offensive realm. He had back-to-back 200 OPS plus seasons in 1885 and 86. He led the league in OPS for 6 straight seasons from 82 to 87. He bat over 300 for 16 straight seasons. He has the highest slugging percentage in the 19th century and the 3rd highest batting average in the 19th century. He ranks 19th all-time in advanced on-base average, 11th all-time in OPS plus, and 8th all-time in WAR per game amongst Hall of Fame position players with over 1,000 games played. He has the 10th highest blocking score in Major League Baseball history. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that he is the best offensive player of the 19th century. Dan Brouthers was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1945 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away August 2nd, 1932 at the age of 74 in East Orange, New Jersey. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. One would think that having a stump for an index finger, a paralyzed pinky, and a bent middle finger would stop someone from choosing a career path that requires incredible finger dexterity like pitching in the major leagues. However, Mordecai Three-Finger Brown not only managed to throw pitches with his mangled hand, he defied the odds and pitched his way into the MLB Hall of Fame. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And on the 30th episode of Learn a Hall of Famer, we take a look at the legendary Cubs ace who made Mr. Burns' cut for his Ringer baseball team, Mordecai Brown. Brown was born October 19, 1876 in Niceville, Indiana. His father was a devout Christian, so he gave his children names from the Bible, so Mordecai Peter Brown was chosen for one of his sons. And because he was born on the centennial birthday of the United States, he was given an extra middle name of Centennial. One day, as a child, his curiosity bested him when playing with some farming equipment, which caused him to lose most of his right index finger. He also fell one day while chasing a rabbit, severely breaking and damaging the rest of his fingers on his right hand. So all in all, he pretty much had no index finger, a bent middle finger, a paralyzed pinky finger, leaving him with 2 fully functional digits on his dominant hand. Brown, like most people in the day, played baseball as an escape from the hard labor in the coal mines. And one day, he was called in to pitch for the team's absent pitcher. This ended up being a huge blessing in Brown's life. With his mangled hand, he was able to throw some pretty nasty pitches that people with normal hands just couldn't spin. The ball was described as jumpy and made hitters' lives quite difficult. Brown quickly garnered fans and ascended his way through the semi-pro teams, eventually signing with the St. Louis Cardinals of the National League in 1903. Mordecai Brown played in the MLB from 1903 to 1916 for the Cardinals, Cubs, Terriers, Tip-Tops, and Whales, the last 3 being part of the Federal League. He switch hit and threw righty. He had a 2.06 ERA, a 1.066 WHIP, a career record of 239 and 130, and 1,375 strikeouts, 58 WAR, .0165 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 138 ERA plus, and a 2.41 FIP. Brown was most well known for his hand disfigurement, but despite that, he led the Cubs to the winningest longest season in MLB history in 1906. The Cubs won 116 games in a 152 season in 1906, resulting in a 76.3 winning percentage, the highest in history. No team has ever eclipsed the win total or the winning percentage, with the closest being the 2001 Seattle Mariners. In fact, during Brown's tenure with the Cubs, the team never finished below 91 wins and had 3 seasons over 100 wins. And remember, these are all in 152 game seasons, not 162 like the modern day. The Cubs from 1906 to 1910 have the greatest record in a 5-year span in MLB history. Brown also holds the Cubs franchise record for the most shutouts, career ERA, single season ERA, and most wins in a season. Mordecai Brown was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1949 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away February 14th, 1948 at the age of 71 in Terre Haute, Indiana. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. After he retired, the story of Ray Brown turned into quite a tragic one. From having to resort to working at a biscuit company's carton division, to his obituary not even mentioning his prolific baseball career. But thankfully, over time, the baseball world poured more time and effort into uncovering the Negro League stats and players, and it was discovered how great Ray Brown truly was. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today, we look at the Homestead Grays great, say that 5 times fast, Ray Brown. Brown was born February 23, 1908 in Alger, Ohio. Unfortunately, not much is known about his childhood, but he did attend Alger High School and play baseball there. One of the only existing box scores we have is a 15-5 defeat where Brown was a catcher. He also played basketball at Alger High, but the team was never really good. They lost in the first round of the County Class B tournament for 3 consecutive years, with the scores being 30-8, 21-8, and 16-12. But in 1930, a man named John Matthews invited Brown to play for the Dayton Marcos. Now, the Marcos were no longer in the Negro Leagues, but they played black and white teams from the Midwest. But in 1931, he would join the Indianapolis ABCs of the Negro National Leagues, eventually landing with the Homestead Grays, where he would play the rest of his Hall of Fame career. Ray Brown played in the MLB Negro Leagues from 1931 to 1945 for the Indianapolis ABCs, Detroit Wolverines, and the Homestead Grays. He switch hit and threw righty. He had a 3.12 ERA, a 1.266 WHIP, a career record of 119-46 and 719 strikeouts, 38.2 WAR, .231 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 147 ERA plus, and a 2.77 FIP. Brown was most well known for being the ace of the Homestead Grays for over a decade. He was their Sunday pitcher, which is the best spot to be as a pitcher in the Negro Leagues. He has the 2nd most wins in Negro League history, just 1 behind Bullet Rogan. He also has the 4th highest ERA plus of pitchers in the Negro Leagues who started more than 100 games. Now, Brown was primarily a pitcher, but he was a hitter who can more than hold his own in the batter's box. His best season was in 1940, where he amassed a whopping 8.2 WAR, a mark near unheard of in the Negro Leagues due to low game totals. He started only 18 games and got 6.8 pitching WAR. For context, Tarek Skubal started 31 games this year and got 6.6 pitching WAR. Brown would go 17-2 with a 251 ERA plus and batting .325 with a 130 OPS plus in 1940. One of the best Negro League seasons ever. Ray Brown was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2006 via the Committee on African American Baseball. He passed away February 8, 1965 at the age of 56 in Dayton, Ohio. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great, and I will see you next time. Now everybody knows Josh Gibson, one of the most prolific and powerful players in the Negro Leagues. But what about the man that Gibson himself called home run? Also going by Ese Hombre, that man, Willard Brown. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at potentially the most talented player from the Negro Leagues, Willard Brown. Brown was born June 26, 1916 in Shreveport, Louisiana. He grew up around the game of baseball, and in fact, he was even the spring training bat boy for his future team, the Kansas City Monarchs. In 1934, Brown actually left school to pursue the game of baseball and signed an $8 a week contract with the Monroe Monarchs of the Negro Southern Leagues. And after just 1 season with the Monroe Monarchs, Brown joined the Kansas City Monarchs after being spotted by their owner, J.L. Wilkinson. His contract turned from $8 a week to $125 a month, and his career turned from green to gold as he would eventually land in the MLB Hall of Fame. Willard Brown played in the MLB Negro Leagues from 1937 to 1944, coming back after military service in 1945 to play from 1946 to 1948. He played for the Kansas City Monarchs and the St. Louis Browns. He bat and threw righty. He played outfield and shortstop. top. He bat .351 for his career average, scoring 332 runs with 580 hits, driving in 391 RBIs and a .977 OPS. 20.2 WAR, .0469 WAR per game, 178 OPS plus, and a .447 advanced on base average. Now, the case of Willard Brown is an interesting one. I mean, you saw his numbers. His efficiency is insane. His stats are crazy, but only when he was trying. Former teammate Frazier Robinson said that Brown just never got serious about baseball. I mean, it was not uncommon to see him reading a copy of Reader's Digest in the outfield during a game. Another teammate, Sammy Haynes, called Brown a Sunday player, which meant when it was Sunday and all the fans were in attendance, Brown would crank it up to 11 and perform his best. During the Monarchs' run from 1937 to 1946, they won 6 Negro American League championships, and Brown was considered their best offensive weapon. Many players compared him to the great Josh Gibson, and Gibson himself even recognized how great Brown actually was. Even when the MLB was integrated, Willard Brown was considered the prize package over players like Jackie Robinson, according to the Associated Press. Even with his lack of effort sometimes, he still put up crazy numbers, with his OPS plus being higher than Mickey Mantle and Rogers Hornsby's. But Brown wasn't strictly a Negro League player. He got his shot in the American League in 1947 with 61 games for the St. Louis Browns. But it didn't go so well for Brown in the American Leagues, as great racial prejudice was against him, and he barely wanted to be there in the first place, as he thought the Monarchs could whoop the last place Browns. He also crushed in the Puerto Rican leagues, with his single season home run record of 27 still standing, with the closest being Reggie Jackson, who only put up 20. Thankfully, Brown's talent was recognized and he was rightfully enshrined in Cooperstown. Willard Brown was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2006 via the Negro League Committee. He passed away August 4th, 1996 at the age of 81 in Houston, Texas. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. MLB Hall of Famers usually get in by a vote, and that's exactly how Jim Bunning got in, but he also won 2 other big elections: the U.S. House of Representatives vote and the U.S. Senate vote, both in the state of Kentucky. He must have been just one heck of a public speaker to win all those elections, and we certainly know that he was one heck of an MLB pitcher. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the greatest dual league pitchers in MLB history, Jim Bunning. Bunning was born October 23, 1931 in Covington, Kentucky. Growing up, the players that Bunning idolized the most were pitchers. He attended St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, where he was a 3-sport varsity athlete. And after graduating from high school, he attended Xavier University, where he pitched well enough for the Detroit Tigers to take notice. Bunning's parents gave the okay for him to play professional baseball, but only if he could finish his college degree. The Tigers willingly obliged, and after 3.5 years in college and 7 seasons in the minor leagues, he would finally find a permanent spot in the MLB. Jim Bunning played in the MLB from 1955 to 1971 for the Tigers, Phillies, Pirates, and Dodgers. He bat and threw righty. He had a 3.27 ERA, a 1.179 WHIP, a career record of 224 and 184, and 2,855 strikeouts, 59.4 WAR, .142 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 115 ERA plus, and a 3.22 FIP. After almost quitting the sport following his 1956 season due to his extended stay in the minors, Bunning's career turned out to be more than just alright. He split his career almost 50-50 in the AL and the NL and accomplished quite a lot in both leagues. He is the only pitcher ever to throw a no-hitter, win 100 games, and strike out 1,000 batters in both leagues. He is also one of only 5 players to ever throw a no-hitter in both leagues. And he threw the 7th perfect game in MLB history on Father's Day of 1964. But Bunning wasn't just known for his career in baseball, he was also known for his quite successful career in politics. He got his start in politics in 1977 when he was elected to the Fort Thomas City Council. He was then elected to the Kentucky State Senate, and in 1986 he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. And then in 1998 he was elected to the U.S. Senate to represent the state of Kentucky alongside Mitch McConnell. Jim Bunning was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1996 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away May 26, 2017 at the age of 85 in Edgewood, Kentucky. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. On August 4, 1897, the Cleveland Spiders were forced to forfeit the opening game of a doubleheader against the Louisville Colonels after star left fielder Jesse Burkett refused to leave the field following his ejection from the game. And in the second game of that doubleheader, Burkett was again ejected for arguing with the umpire, who then called 2 policemen to have Burkett forcefully removed from the grounds. This is one of just many stories that make Burkett one of the most fascinating hotheads in baseball history. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the man they call the Crab, Jesse Burkett. Burkett was born December 4th, 1868 in Wheeling, West Virginia. Nowadays, Burkett is known for his stellar offense, but he actually got his start in baseball as a pitcher. It actually wouldn't even be until the major leagues that he became a full-time hitter. In 1888, he signed with the Scranton team of the Central League for $85 a month. And just one season later, he signed with the Worcester team of the Atlantic Association. And in 1890, he signed with the Indianapolis Hoosiers, who quickly crumbled from the National League before the 1890 season, but his contract was picked up by the New York Giants, where he would officially begin his MLB career. Jesse Burkett played in the MLB from 1890 to 1905 for the Giants, Cleveland Spiders, Cardinals, Browns, and Boston Americans. He bat and threw lefty, he played left field, he bat .338 for his career average, scoring 1,720 runs with 2,850 hits, driving in 952 RBIs and stealing 389 bags, 59.7 WAR, .0289 WAR per game, 140 OPS plus, and a 408 advanced on base average. Now, Burkett was most well known for his brash personality and superb small ball skills. 79.8% of his hits were singles that he either bunted for or slapped through the infield. He was also widely regarded as the best bunter that his era of baseball ever saw. He finished 1895 and 1896 with above a 400 batting average. He accumulated 225 and 240 hits in those seasons respectively, and those seasons, mind you, were only in 132 and 133 games. But Burkett wasn't just an extremely good baseball player, he was also an extremely hot-headed personality. On numerous occasions, newspapers had to put together incoherent sentences from Burkett just to blank out his profanity. One publication had to write this: "Why, you blank blankety blank, do you know what I think of you? I think you are the blankest blank blank that ever came out of the blank blankest town in the blank blank land." One writer recalled even while hitting .400, he played with a scowl on his face. Being cranky both on and off the field definitely earned Burkett his nickname of Crab. Jesse Burkett was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1946 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away May 27, 1953 at the age of 84 in Worcester, Massachusetts. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time.